Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Turner. I'll come to that in a minute. We're covering a short lunch and learn session this afternoon, which is going to last about an hour. And the topic is reducing waste in house building case study with Redrow, as you can see on the screen in front of you. I'd like to introduce Olivia Ward from Redrow, who I've known now since February of 2020, when things were very different in the world. And Olivia invited me to run some sessions through the school with Redrow's teams around the UK, looking at the whole issue around waste and resource efficiency. What a long time ago that now seems, and we'll kind of come to that through the discussions that we're going to have. So that's me. Just in terms of my day job, I'm the sector lead for facilities management in the school, but I also look after a group within the school which involves a large proportion of the school's partners, and focuses around the area of waste and resource use. And this has become a really active group. We're seeing a lot of interest in the whole area, not just around the kind of the basics of waste, but understanding how to be more resource efficient, how to design out waste at source, and we'll definitely be coming to that. Okay, just in terms of the rules of engagement for this afternoon, because of the size of the audience, thanks to so many of you for joining in with us. We've had to switch off microphones and cameras, but you can participate. So you'll see a Q&A function. If you go to the top or the bottom of your screen, that should appear, and you can write questions, and we're going to, as much as possible, answer those questions in real time when they come up. If nothing else, that's going to give Olivia, who's carrying the heavy burden of doing most of the talking today, an opportunity to breathe. So feel free to ask your questions. We're also going to use something called Mentimeter to do some polls, and we've got Olivia's put together some great questions for you, where you can give your opinion or give your answers to a particular question. Please join in with this because it's good fun. We'll explain how it works in a minute. You don't need to write anything down in particular unless you really want to, because we will issue all of this content afterwards. Just so you know, we are going to try to record this session. It doesn't always work, but we hope it will. And a recording will be available for you to kind of review afterwards, and also pass on to colleagues who may be interested in what's there. So one more thing to mention is that we really value your feedback on these sessions. We've been running online sessions now ever since probably the last time I saw Olivia face to face, which was back in February of last year. So with the action of running online sessions comes the fact that, you know, we think we can always improve them, because it's definitely a slightly different way of communicating with people. So please let us know what you think about how it's going and how it's gone using the feedback form. I'll just come to Mentimeter now, and what you do with Mentimeter, it's probably best you set this up now and then you've got it ready. If you've got a phone handy or a separate browser on your computer, you go to www.menti.com and you'll be invited to put in a code, and that code is 94911626, and then just wait for instruction from Olivia as to the questions when they come along. You can do it on a separate browser on your computer, but don't switch this off, otherwise you'll lose us altogether, and that would be a tragedy. Okay, right. Without further ado, now I can unshare. And pass to Olivia.
Thanks, Mark. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, all visible.
Okay, good. Thanks for coming to the session, everyone. So like Mark said, my name's Olivia and I'm a sustainability manager at Redrow. So I've worked for the company for about 3 years now, focusing on various aspects of sustainability, and a focus point for the past year or so has been waste. So that's why I'm here today, just giving you an overview of why we're wanting to reduce our waste and sort of what we've been doing in this area. So I thought I'd just start off with an overview of the key drivers for reducing waste, and then I'll go on to our research project and methodology. It might be that you want to sort of replicate this project in your own organisation. So hopefully this session could help you with that. And also an overview of the project findings and just a bit about some recycling schemes that we use in Redrow. So Redrow are a national house builder. We've got around 120 live sites at the moment, and our corporate strategy is based on 3 themes. So we've got thriving communities, valuing people, and building responsibly. So within the building responsibly theme, we have a key part of that is managing our resources efficiently. And so obviously waste comes into that, and improving resource efficiency and reducing waste. So we have actually set some targets in this area as well. So we've set a target to reduce our waste intensity by 10% by 2022. And we measure our waste in 100 metres square of build. We've also set another target to divert 95% and over of construction waste from landfill. So I was just interested and thought it might be a useful exercise to understand how many of you or your organisations have set a target to reduce waste. So that's the first poll for today. So if you just go on the Mentimeter. So most of you, looks like you have got one or are looking to create one in the next 12 months, so in the short term. So that's really good to see. As an industry, I think it's something that is quite apparent, particularly moving forward with regard to carbon reductions as well, and companies targeting net zero carbon emissions as well.
Should add, Olivia, that all these polls are anonymous, so people feel free to answer as accurately as you like.
So those organisations that maybe don't, well, there's none so far that don't have one, but I suppose if they were looking to set a target, key part of that would be finding out where you're at initially, baselining that. Thanks, Sophie. So construction waste is a huge issue, and it also has a huge environmental impact as well. So construction, demolition and excavation waste accounted for around 62% of the UK's total waste in 2018, and that's according to DEFRA. And a study from the University of Salford also estimates that around 13% of materials that are delivered to site go direct to waste. So some materials are never even used in construction. So
I see your slides at the moment, Olivia.
Oh, okay. Sorry, forgot to share my screen.
That's all right. What would be a show without slides, eh?
So this is just the last slide, just outlining those stats for you. And then the drivers for improving waste management. So I suppose every organisation would probably have their own drivers for wanting to reduce waste, but these are just some of our own drivers. So obviously there's the legal side, health, safety and environmental best practice. It also helps support our ISO 14001 standard and helps with our ESG reporting. material shortages and the current supply chain situation are also a driver for us wanting to improve our resource efficiency, as well as profitability as well. So using less resources, wasting less, and in turn saving money. And as well, the carbon reduction aspect, the links between the resources that we're using and the carbon emissions that are associated with that and with the waste as well. So in terms of the profitability, our waste disposal costs are unfortunately millions of pounds every year. And these waste disposal costs are only the tip of the iceberg as well. So we need to also consider the hidden costs of waste as well. So that's things like energy use, rework, time and effort. And RAP estimate that the true cost of waste is approximately £10, the waste disposal costs. And this is all in the context as well of rising landfill tax. So landfill tax is currently at 96.70p per tonne, which is considerably more than what it was in 2012 and 2013. One of the main reasons for that being reducing landfill capacity. So the landfill sites can't take as much waste. There's also the plastics packaging tax, which is coming into force in April 22, and a tax of £200 per tonne will be applied to any plastic packaging which doesn't contain a minimum of 30% recycled content. So even though, say, at Redrow, a house builder, we don't really produce the packaging, but it's still a cost that might be applied to us because it might be passed down through the supply chain. So we might end up paying for that in the products and materials that we purchase. So in terms of the carbon reduction, the waste reduction and the carbon sort of link together, and we've recently committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So part of this will involve reducing greenhouse gas emissions through greater efficiency in energy and materials and using renewables. We've also committed to setting science-based targets as well for all direct and indirect activities. So waste comes into our scope 3 carbon emissions. You can see down there, waste generated in operations. So we'll be measuring and trying to improve on that in order to reduce our own emissions. So all of these factors obviously have prompted us to really think about how we can reduce our waste further. We are on track to meet our waste reduction target, but obviously there's still lots that you can do to improve. So we decided in 2020 to start a project which the main objective was to identify the key causes of waste in our houses or produced from building our houses. So as part of the project, we ran 5 workshops. There's Mark there at one of the sessions, and they were internal workshops. So we use them as an opportunity to provide training, as well as an opportunity for us to learn from various different people within Redrow, and they could share suggestions to reduce waste. And it was really interesting because there was a range of people at the workshops. You could gather a lot of different perspectives.
Olivia, we've got a question already, which is, I think, a kind of a really valid one, and What it says is, do you have different waste intensity targets for different types of houses, different stages of build, or different types of materials, or is it a flat percentage intensity reduction across all? So
yeah, that's a really good question actually, and so it's the latter at the moment. It's just one flat waste reduction target, but I think the next stage would probably be to set individual waste streams could be a good one. So reducing plasterboard waste by X% or something like that. But yeah, at the moment it's just one target.
And one thing I should have added really at the start is that though this, what's great about this project is it focuses on something we all understand, i.e. a house, because people understand what houses are about, and we've all at least got a basic understanding of what goes into the construction of a house. But the methodology is something that you can apply across kind of any area of the built environment. In fact, we're actually doing some work at the moment with an M&E contractor who's not using quite the same methodology, but it's very, very similar kind of methodology to understand a baseline. And again, understand the basic waste intensity and then think about how to make improvements from there. So we hope that comes across to you as the conversation develops, and you may want to throw in questions relating to your own particular area of construction in which you're involved, or area of supply.
Yeah. So in terms of the practical side of the project, we built an Oxford house type. So this is our standard house. This is one of our standard house types. And we built it in 3 different regions: Yorkshire, Lancashire and the South East. And we carefully segregated all of the waste produced from each plot into different containers for different waste streams. And we kept all of the waste on site, well, on the plot. So the plot was fenced off, and everyone that was working on this plot knew that no waste was to leave the plot. So that meant that at the end of the project, we could measure this waste separately, which would give us the total amount of waste produced for this one plot.
And already 2 more questions, Olivia, which are kind of very relevant to the topic matter. One is, have you already started developing targets or benchmarks for waste generation by a specific waste stream? And the other one that kind of fits to that is, with the rate of 95% of waste to be recycled, do you have a plan of how to reach the 0 landfill goal all businesses are tasked with?
So in the first question, we haven't started setting individual waste stream targets, and I'd be interested to find out if anyone else in the house building sector has done that. If everyone sort of thinks that's ultimately the direction that we need to be heading in, then perhaps it's something that we could talk about at the next waste group, Mark.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and I think it applies across the other sectors as well. So thinking about the areas where you're going to get the easier hits, and what's going to be a longer term project to reduce waste.
Yeah. And the second question for diverting the waste from landfill. So we actually have exceeded that 95% target for the past 3 or 4 years. So it's usually around 98%. The remaining 2%, I think it is probably going to be a case of focusing on and really getting a good idea of what the materials are that are going to landfill, and also potentially working with the waste contractors who manage the facilities where that waste is being handled as well.
Yeah, and also obviously, no doubt you'll be focusing on rather than just necessarily diverting from landfill, moving higher up the waste hierarchy in terms of potential reuse. I know we're going to come to that later on, some of the areas. So more effective and sustainable methods of diversion.
Okay. So yeah, so all of the waste was kept on the plot, and we created this waste table. So all the site managers visited the plots daily and basically completed this table. It's almost like a log of the deliveries and also the waste linked to those deliveries. And this enabled us to identify any issues with the deliveries or with the suppliers. So we could see if something was late or if it was damaged, or if there was something missing from a delivery, and also what waste was created on site as well. So at this stage, we didn't actually weigh the weight. I think initially that would have been a really good idea, but I think the complexity of weighing waste on a daily basis was a bit much. So that's why we just segregated it all and kept it until the end of the project to be weighed.
Olivia, we may never hit the end of this presentation. You've already had 3 more questions, which must be good. So one was really sort of saying what we discussed before. Do you think diverting from landfill is a sufficient driver for moving waste up the hierarchy? Shouldn't targets be on recycling and reuse? And I think we already answered that one, haven't we? In terms of...
So I mean, I think actually it's not really been finalised yet, but I think we are actually setting a target, well, not a target, but a commitment to design out waste and come up with 3 significant designing out waste opportunities per year. I think we're thinking of that would be more our commitment in the future. So it's essentially that's starting at the top of the waste hierarchy and preventing the waste. So I see where that question is coming from, which is, I think it's a good reason to potentially look into what are the commitments we could set in this area and what might help to prevent the waste. So hence focus on designing out waste, which we'll come on to later.
Yeah, that's great, because there are a couple more questions. There's one from Tony Burgess, who says, I'm in M&E, so sorry about this, Olivia. On our site, we have specific skips for certain waste. How would we influence our industry to try and only order what is required and not add fat into it? So again, I know you're going to touch on this, the whole procurement area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then another question was consideration given to the fact that, this is an interesting one, knowing waste was being carefully monitored may have impacted the amount of waste by subcontractors. In other words, they know they're being watched, so they do think this could skew the amount of waste under normal conditions. Yeah,
I can appreciate that. So we're going to come on to that in a moment, as I think it's the next slide. So yeah, just bear with me.
Let's get there. Yeah.
So yeah, all the waste was kept on the plot until the end of the build, and then the bags were individually weighed at the facility. So in terms of setting up the site for the project, we had the plots fenced off. So this prevented the containers and skips becoming contaminated with other materials that weren't belonging to that waste project plot. We also had posters around the site to try and engage the subcontractors and everyone working on the project as well. We wanted it to be a learning exercise for everyone. So the posters and those sorts of materials help with that. And obviously skip signs for each waste stream. So in terms of the question that was asked, so everyone working on this project was given training by the site manager, and they were encouraged to work as normal. We stressed to them, really, like, we want you to work as normal, because the aim of this project is for us to get the most accurate and normal representation of waste produced from building a house. So they were given training and then signed this declaration form just to declare that they understood the aim of the project and what they needed to do to help it be a success, I suppose. So they also reminded to segregate the materials carefully as well. And it's worth saying that the plots were checked up on daily as well, so monitoring it was important. So I'll just talk about the findings and opportunities, and I suppose it's worth saying that these are really applicable to Redrow because it was our project, but hopefully you might also find some of these findings useful, or they might prompt you to think about how this, whether these findings are applicable to your organisation, and what you could do to try and improve on some of the findings as well. So most of the findings here relate, well, I'm trying to focus on basically preventing waste, but there will be a small section at the end on recycling as well, just because I know there's a lot of house builders on the call, so just wanted to highlight some of the schemes that we're working with for recycling. So our key waste streams were inert, wood and plasterboard waste, and plastics and packaging was the 4th largest waste stream. And that leads on to the next poll, which was how much waste do you think was generated from building one Redrow house? So this will be an average from all of the project plots, so that there were 3 project plots, and it includes all waste, so including inert and hazardous. So it's mostly in the direction of the higher end rather than the lower end. View in the middle. So the answer was 8.8 tonnes for one house type, which is a lot. And I think there's some other house builders who produce less waste than this as well. So we're also quite aware of that. So that's just for a Redrow house.
If you could just bring back your slides, Olivia.
Yeah, I'll just find them now. So that does include inert waste, and it's also worth noting that we crush and reuse inert waste on all of our sites, so it's never actually disposed of. Can you see my slides, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. So of that 8.8 tonnes, yeah, a large proportion of that was the inert. So that's bricks, blocks, ceramics, roof tiles. 18% was timber, 14% plasterboard, 2% plastics and / packaging, and 2% plaster skin, 1% cardboard, and less than 1% was electrical, hazardous waste, metal, and polystyrene and insulation. So those still did have a few kilograms, but not much. And I did think it was quite interesting with the plastics and packaging, because even though the volume of these items was quite significant and they do take up quite a lot of room in skips and everything, they did only account for 8% of the 2% of the weight. But if you're thinking about reducing costs, then that involves reducing the volume in your skips. So you just need to be mindful that potentially the focus shouldn't always be on the tonnage. And another reason why we did the project was to see what that waste would look like. I suppose it's almost like a shock factor of, look how much there is. So we wanted to get a visual representation of that waste. So there was around 5 bags of plasterboard, 1 skip of inert waste. The container there, that was full of bags of plastic and cardboard packaging. Also, yeah, I don't think I mentioned it before, but the plasterboard was kept dry as well, because obviously that would affect, if it gets wet and from the rain, then that would affect the weight. So it was dried out in a container. We just got it out for the pictures.
Question on the breakdown of the inert waste, because obviously you listed some items: brick, blocks, ceramic, roof tiles, all the bits and bobs that go in there. But did you get a feel for more specifics around that area from site to site?
No, we didn't really get a breakdown of the inert category, because when we came to weigh it, it all was in the same skip. So we got more of a reason, we got more detail when it came to actually the causes of the inert waste. And that was really more, I suppose, the emphasis of the project for us was on the causes of the waste rather than the weight of it. So I'll talk a bit more about that shortly. So the offcuts that we had: angle beading from plasterboard, obviously the plasterboard, chipboard flooring, timber, electrical wires and plastic piping. There's some instances of over-ordering on our schedules. So when it came to the end of the build, we noticed that we did have some leftover items. So skirting board, architraves, timber, yeah, all sorts, just had, when it comes to the end of the build, just left over. So that over-ordering presents a double cost to the business, because materials have been purchased but not required and not used. And then there's also the costs associated with transporting, offloading, storing and disposing of the surplus items. So in terms of the packaging waste, that included shrink wrap, plastic banding, containers for paint. So I know there's some paint cans in there, but we do actually recycle all of those, but just for the purposes of the project, because we didn't want anything to go off the plot, we said we just want to keep everything. So most of the packaging waste was generated from the second fix. So we noticed significant amount of packaging when it came to the kitchen and the bathroom, the appliances, and radiators and towel radiators, shower screens, door casing wrapping, and staircase balustrade wrapping and straps.
Couple more questions for you, Olivia. One saying, did the waste company offer enough services for all these segregated wastes, and were you able to follow through to see if it's actually recycled in practice? Because here's a statement: often the figures given by brokers and waste companies are fabricated.
Yeah, so we worked with mainly Reconomy on this project, and they were involved throughout the whole project. So from the planning phase to the weighing phase, regular meetings, visits to site, and so we had someone from Reconomy come with us, come to site the day that the waste was collected from the plot, and followed it to the delivery to the waste weighing facility, the segregating, and basically oversaw the whole process to make sure that the data that we got was accurate, and that all that waste was weighed separately to all the other waste from the site and from other projects as well.
Thanks, Olivia. And there's another question, which is from Gordon Miller at Greenbelt Group. And Gordon says, sorry if it's been said already, but if the drive is to net zero, then the embodied CO2 in the weighty items could be overwhelmed by the energy required to manufacture wire, plastics, treated timber, very kind of carbon intensive processes there. In other words, is weight reduction necessarily the best goal? Mm-hmm. It's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we'll probably be able to answer that as we get a bit further into our net zero planning and delivery. So yeah, I think that'd be an interesting area to find out more about. But yeah, because obviously this is we're always at a point in time and we're learning all the time. So what's excellent about this is it actually starts from scratch. This project, it's one of the best things I saw in it right at the start, and why we've been so excited about kind of bringing it to you to see. Really delighted that Redrow are doing that as well. Another question: did the project consider damage to delivered material and poor storage? Well, we'll come to that, won't we? Let's won't steal your thunder. Yeah, we'll come on to that shortly. So inefficient use of materials. We picked up on, for example, this picture could be that they've opened too many bags, and that links to the traditional low prioritization of material costs. So I suppose some contractors might think, oh, it's only X, it's only so and so pounds or even pence. But as we know, with the prices of materials going up, it could be that mindset changes, which leads me on to the next poll, which is, do you think that issues surrounding material shortages and supply chain issues will encourage the construction industry to be more efficient with resources? So mostly yes so far.
I think you've got a good mix of optimists, pessimists and pragmatists there.
Yeah, I suppose it's about linking the two as well. So in Redrow, we've circulated we've communicated to construction teams and construction directors that obviously the current situation, and then what they can do to conserve the materials that they do get hold of. So that's things like the material storage, preventing damage, all those sorts of things. So even though this situation is causing a lot of issues to the industry, it could also present itself as maybe a good opportunity to improve your resource efficiency as well. Thanks for that. So next slide. So the material handling. This batch of roof tiles was delivered to site cracked. It was either damaged during the transportation or offloading, but as you can see, it's still in the packaging there. The site manager thinks it was damaged during transportation. So again, just things that you could do on the back of that would be training with forklift drivers, or to improve the material handling if it was during offloading, or you could be in touch with the supplier of the roof tiles and maybe just say this has happened, this has been delivered to site damaged. Make them aware, is it something to do with the packaging, or was it the way that they were stacked? Thinking about those sorts of reasons. And then there's also products that were damaged during installation. So the picture that you see there is a bath panel, and that couldn't be used, which is obviously not only a waste of materials, but also of money as well. So I had to order a new panel, which caused a bit of a delay as well, because we had to wait for the new one to be delivered. There was also some damaged plasterboard and roof tiles as well. So the material protection, we noticed some sites were better than others when it came to protecting materials. An example here is the brick jackets. One of our divisions was using these to protect the bricks from the bad weather. The cost of those is around £3, but they are reusable. And then when you think about the number of bricks that you might be able to protect and save from becoming waste, and you think that cost may be worth it in the end, versus not protecting bricks, which is the picture on the right, which leads to damage. And like we wouldn't use that brick obviously. So back to the roof tiles, and this links again to the supply chain issues. So the site, even though that this was delivered damaged, the site didn't want to actually reject this order, because the lead time at the moment and even when we were doing this project was a long time. So that made it difficult for the sites to reject that delivery, because they obviously didn't want to wait another however many weeks it was for a new batch of roof tiles to be delivered. So they accepted the delivery, and obviously within that delivery there was a lot of roof tiles that they could use, but these ones were went into the inert waste. There was also some instances of supplier or manufacturer error. So the granite worktop just here, the granite windowsill, it was manufactured 5mm too short on either side, so we had to send that back to the manufacturer, and they sent us a new one. Some deliveries were also incorrect and short in quantity or late, which was what we picked up on in the waste tables as well, when the site managers were logging all the deliveries to site. So we also noticed that frequent design changes were causing issues and potentially waste as well. So this batch of roof products here were delivered to site. So they were delivered to one of the project plots, but for a previous version of the Oxford house type. So the supplier had sent an old batch of products basically, and if they can't be used on that house, on the new house type, then those can end up as waste as well. So it'd be really rethinking about the frequency of design changes, and when those should be made. Is it the end of a site or a phase, or every quarter, or not just ad hoc, because it can cause issues for sites and suppliers. So we also noticed there was some complex design features. So this is the cupboard under the stairs here, and it was it's a door that was manufactured specifically for Redrow, and it used to be cut to size on site and installed on site under the cupboard, but on this waste project plot it got chipped and damaged during the cutting and installation, and so it had to be repaired in the end. It wasn't actually waste, but it could have been had the repair not been as good. But still, these things, they costed time and money having to repair. So just another thing to think about. And in terms of the next steps following on from the project, so we've set up a waste and buildability working group, and that's made up of various heads of departments and different teams. Commercial, technical, construction and sales meet every month, and basically the aim is to implement and work through some of the findings and opportunities that have been identified in the research. So the research has given us a good starting point of some issues that are affecting us, and the aim of the waste and buildability group is to sort of work through those and implement some changes to try and reduce the waste.
Could I just throw in a question there, Olivia, and just ask, does that involve the procurement function for Redrow? Yeah,
it does.
So we're clear on that. It's so important, isn't it? The issue that we found time and time again when we look at these things is that all the right people have all the right information, but they might not all be focused on the same project at the same time. And this is a kind of a way to bring people together, a singular focus, and enable you to kind of get the opportunities while there's still time to do something about it.
Yeah, technical and design, because we wanted to make sure that all these different perspectives and different opinions are taken into consideration. So that's why we've involved different departments.
It's an interesting question for in terms of Redrow, because you are, of course, you pride yourselves on being a very traditional house builder in terms of the product. It says, are you considering increased use of modern methods of construction to support the reduction of site waste?
Yeah, so we definitely are. One of the things that we're looking at the moment is getting our bay windows manufactured off-site, and basically reviewing our house types and sort of identifying which areas could be manufactured off-site, even if it's just, even if it's the bay windows, or trying to pick up those opportunities, because I appreciate that MMC just give us some opportunities to reduce waste. So the focus of the group so far has mainly been on designing out waste. So we've made some changes to our designs to reduce the number of offcuts in the waste generated. So I mentioned we've done the cupboard. We've also simplified the skirting and architrave lengths used. So we used to have large skirting and large architrave downstairs, and then small skirting and architrave upstairs. But it was just, I think it was just sometimes a bit complicated for the people working on site, might end up using the wrong length here or there. So we've changed it just to use large skirting and then small architrave across the whole house, so reducing the likelihood of human error. We've also removed internal nibs and removed some internal walls and small inlets. So one big change that we've done recently is also reduced our ground floor ceiling level by 65 mil, and removed a single course of brickwork. And this was in order to reduce the timber offcuts. So a lot of the sites were using 3-meter timber because our ceiling height didn't allow us to use the standard 2.4. So we've changed our ceiling height now, which hopefully will produce less offcuts. So it's really just taking a view of those changes that you can make to prevent the waste, following the waste hierarchy, prevention at the top. And I think designing out waste does tie in quite nicely with that.
I have a massively long question now, but a really relevant one. But Ellen, who asked the question, does at least apologise. It's quite a long one. Yeah, and what she says is packaging creates a large volume of waste. However, there's a fine line reducing packaging while still protecting the product being transported, as damaged goods create delays to the build programme, as we've seen. Lean ordering has the same associated program issues. A contingency needs to be allowed to ensure the build program is not affected if material is damaged, incorrectly cut on site. Perhaps reuse is the way forward, packaging that can be reused by the supplier, building material reused on other sites in low-cost housing, for instance, a more standardised model for construction with less choice, reduced sizing options for windows and doors.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and it is, again, it is, I suppose, one of the main challenges of reducing your packaging waste is that you don't want to end up reducing it so much that it gets damaged. So yeah, I think that is a good point, thinking about reusable packaging, or even potentially different types of packaging. I know that there's some research being undertaken into various different new materials that are being used. So yeah, maybe in the future we might see some of that come onto the sites.
And I know I've seen instances of, for instance, doors being provided on stillages, so that the need for packaging is taken out of the equation. The doors are safely stored until they're needed. So another question, interesting, as an industry, we look to reduce build sizes to suit the material sizes available. But maybe worth looking at material providers, looking at the material sizes they produce to suit build designs. So taking it the other way around, i.e. plasterboard can be made to any required length, and timber can be cut to required length at the mill, etc.
Yeah.
Which turns the question on its head to a degree, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I was aware of the British Gypsum do make bespoke size boards, and yeah, we could look into doing that with the timber. I suppose it would maybe just mean that you're very dependent then on one supplier, if you were to do that, but something to consider.
It seems to be something there's more flexibility when there's a large quantity.
Yeah.
Because then it makes sense in terms of the run. So looking at the bigger picture. So we need all the options is the answer. We need to consider all the options. But,
so just give a quick overview of some of the recycling schemes that we use. And I think some of these are quite widely used in house building as well. So the paint can recycling scheme. So basically all our paint cans are removed from our sites by the paint contractors, and then they're taken to a decorators centre, and then from there they're recycled. So last year we recycled over 17,000 paint cans. We also use the community wood recycling scheme, and they collect waste wood from our sites. And last year we recycled more than 600 tonnes of waste wood through the scheme. Then there's the British Gypsum plasterboard recycling, who offer a take back scheme for the plasterboard waste. And Scott's Pallets, there's also a few different pallet repatriation schemes that you can use. Those are the ones that we mostly use. And yeah, last year we recycled around 35,000 pallets from our sites, and they also take damaged pallets as well. So that's good. I mean, obviously they have to be loaded onto a truck, so they can't be too badly damaged, but yeah. So I mentioned earlier about the inert waste from our sites. This is all crushed and so stockpiled, crushed and reused on site. So this is an example from our Allerton Gardens development in Liverpool, and they had a large amount of inert waste due to recent excavations. This waste included some concrete as well as general brick, block, ceramic waste. The waste was stockpiled and crushed on site to produce 1,400 tonnes of recycled aggregate, which was then reused in the development in a range of settings. But we did make sure that it was tested in accordance with the RAP protocol before we reused it to ensure it's of suitable quality. And obviously within that exercise, you're also saving money as well, because you don't need to import or transport new materials to the site. We also use lime stabilisation techniques as well. So this is basically treating materials with lime to make it more workable. And both of these methods really support the circular economy as well, and encouraging us to get the longest lifespan from the materials as we can, and keeping materials in use. So yeah, that's the end of the presentation, and hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, let me know, or you can follow up via email if you want. So my email address is there, and there's also a video as well. If you wanted to find out more about the project, that video gives a nice summary.
Olivia, that's absolutely fantastic. Thanks, and really, thanks to you and to Redrow for sharing that, because you didn't need to share it, but you have done, and that's hopefully what the school's about. I'd urge people to look at the short video. You can send that to your colleagues. You can see, kind of, a larger piece of work from what Olivia and Redrow have done online at the school. And we're really interested in your own ideas regards, how we design out waste, how we rethink the problem a little bit as we go. We've got, we're pretty much out of time here. We have 2 minutes left, so I don't think there's going to be any more questions at this stage. Please give us some feedback, as we always ask for, because it's extremely useful in how we plan for future events. But we hope to kind of do more of these as we unearth, if there's a good words, more examples of practical examples of how to go about designing out waste and putting into place reduction programs across the different sectors, across the whole built environment. So we've got 2 more things. All these coming late. That's just a thank you. Thank you for the thank you. And somebody playing devil's advocate right at the end, saying, if waste collected via take-back schemes is still considered waste, what is the drive for that compared to sending that to a recycling centre? Have you got an answer for that, Olivia?
Yeah, so what I would say for that is, if you're recycling via a specific recycling scheme, you're essentially, it helps with making sure that those materials don't become contaminated, and also keeping the materials with together, and rather than going to a general recycling centre, I think would help when it comes to managing the waste in the future.
Yeah, and we're working with, through the school, you'll see something called the Materials Exchange Platform Map, where we're trying to link together a number of these facilities that will take the large amount of unused construction materials that still exist, because we do persistently overorder as a business, as a set of businesses, and there are good materials that deserve to be saved from going to a skip, whatever they're classified as. So we'd urge you to take a look at that as well, please. And with that, you've got lots of thank yous, Olivia, and quite right too. I think we'll say thank you very much and close this session.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.